So tonight, Maundy Thursday, this is the night every year in our journey through Holy Week when we pause to pay special attention to the last night that Jesus had with his disciples, and especially the last meal that they shared together before his death. Now, I imagine a number of you have put a fair amount of work into being here tonight. Maybe you had to rush out of work or fight traffic. Maybe you had to upset your family's regular evening routine. But whatever it is, tonight you did all the things, you made all the adjustments that you needed to make in order to be here with us for this meal. And it makes me wonder, why? Are you hungry for something? The fact that you've come here for a meal presupposes that you must be hungry for something. So what are you hungry for tonight? I imagine on this night so many years ago when the disciples gathered for a meal with Jesus, they were hungry for something. Perhaps they were hungry for hope. Hope for a better future in times that seem chaotic and uncertain, living under the threat of malevolent powers. Perhaps they were hungry to be part of something meaningful, some sort of movement that would change the world for the better. Or maybe they were simply hungry for belonging or community, or to please or impress Jesus, or maybe just to be close to him. And maybe some of these hungers resonate with you tonight, or you're not sure what you're hungry for at all. But as we take some time tonight to sit with this question and reflect on our own hunger, I want to just offer some thoughts that help us consider what Jesus offers to feed us when we come together for this meal. So, in our gospel reading tonight, the writer of John sets the stage for this meal by telling us two important things about Jesus: that he loved his disciples and that he knew he would be leaving them. In John chapter 13, verse 1, we read, Jesus knew that his hour had come to part from this world and to go to the Father. And having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Now, it's only one verse, but it actually tells us some quite significant things about how Jesus might have been feeling that night. It was his last night with his beloved disciples. And if you've ever sat with someone in the last hours before their death, or maybe packed a child off to embark on a new life somewhere far away, perhaps you might begin to imagine how Jesus could have been feeling that night. And recall those final moments together. You have the joy of still being together, of just wanting to soak up every moment and every little detail so you can remember what it's like when they're gone. It's that joy mixed with that pain of knowing that the moments are all too quickly coming to an end. And this complex brew of joy and pain, celebration, sorrow, all mingled together. That's how I imagine could have been Jesus' mindsets during that final meal that he shared with his disciples. Now, the climax of the meal comes when, as we read in 1 Corinthians, Jesus, he takes a loaf of bread, gives thanks, breaks it, and then gives it to his friends. And then he does the same with the wine. And then he instructs them to eat the bread and drink the wine in remembrance of him after he's gone. Now, perhaps Jesus, fully God, knew that when he served the bread and wine, he was instituting a feast of what would become the centering rite for Christendom for the next 2,000 years. But I also imagine the fully human Jesus, overcome with joy and grief for his friends, just reaching out for the things at hand, the bread, the wine, as an act of pure love for them. And so while we have centuries of sacramental theology that tries to help us make sense of what happens when we come to this table, fundamentally, what makes this meal sacred to my mind is its origin point, that it began in Jesus' love for his friends and his desire to remain connected to them and to sustain them through whatever joys or hardships were to come, even after he was gone. And I imagine that anyone who suffered a grievous separation can identify with this love, this desire not to be parted. So as I was grappling with trying to find some other image that would also help us understand the magnitude of Jesus' love that he poured into this meal, my mind kept returning to a scene from Revelations of Divine Love by the medieval mystic Julian of Norwich. In reflecting on the Eucharist, she writes, "The mother may give her child milk, but our precious mother, Jesus, he feeds us with himself and does it full courteously and full tenderly with the blessed sacrament that is the precious food of my life." Now, comparing Jesus to a nursing mother may seem a bit provocative, but what I think she's trying to convey is this intimate and sacred connection that comes when one body feeds another. Like a mother becomes the source of life that nourishes the child who she's had a hand in creating and who she loves beyond all reason. So Jesus nourishes us when we receive the sacrament of Eucharist. Now, Henry Nouwen conveys a similar idea, but he uses some different imagery. And he writes that Eucharist is a recognition. It's the full realization that the one who takes, blesses, breaks, and gives is the one who, from the beginning of time, has desired to enter into communion with us. So think about that. Eucharist is the moment when you are fully seen and perfectly loved for who you truly are, like a mother or child, or like a mother or father loves their newborn child. So after the disciples left the upper room that night and the months and the years ahead, they found themselves in locked rooms, fearing for their lives. They found themselves preaching and defending a message of love to people who rejected them or simply didn't understand. Ultimately, many of them found themselves journeying to their own martyrdoms. And yet, through it all, and the bread and wine, they could continue to experience communion with Jesus, and Jesus alongside them, nourishing and sustaining them, no matter what they encountered on that road. And in that same way, Jesus is present to us tonight in this meal. So that no matter what it is you're hungry for, Jesus is there to feed you with his perfect and self-giving love. And although your problems may not be fixed by this meal, you won't be alone. You will be in communion with God. And you'll also be in communion with this community. I'm sure you noticed that Jesus' Last Supper with the disciples isn't the only significant event that we observe tonight. Our gospel reading also describes how Jesus, the Lord and teacher, took the posture of the humble servant and washed his disciples' feet as an example for how they were to love one another when he was gone. And the Last Supper and the foot washing, I don't see them as two separate, unrelated events. And I believe we find the key that ties them together at the close of our gospel reading tonight, when Jesus tells his disciples, "I give you a commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another." And in Jesus' command or mandate, which incidentally is where the Maundy and Maundy Thursday comes from, it's the derivative of the Latin word mandatum. And Jesus' command to his disciples, he gives voice to the reciprocal nature of Christian love. Just as Jesus loves us, which we experience when we receive the bread of communion or have our feet washed, we are to love others by washing their feet and sharing our bread with them. Or as the writer Nancy Marr succinctly puts it, nourished by God, we must bear God into the world and give God away with ourselves. So I want to pose this second question to you tonight. Whatever it is that you're hungry for, after you've been fed with the bread that Jesus offers us at the table, and been nourished by his body and sustained by his presence? What is the bread that you will share with others? On Sunday, we're going to follow our Easter service with a big potluck feast, like we do every year. I'm sure I'll see most of you there. And in past years, the messiness and disorder of these potlucks, it's always kind of bothered me. The random assortment of things all thrown together. There's my Costco mac and cheese next to someone's like artfully baked bread, next to the half-eaten box of crackers that somebody grabbed on their way out the door that morning. Last year, we had too many desserts, not enough sides. We often ran out of pizza for the kids. But it struck me recently that this meal is actually, it's a beautiful picture of what it looks like to live out Jesus' commandment to love one another in community. In some seasons, you might not have much to offer. And in others, you can give generously from your abundance. But everyone brings something, whatever they can from wherever they're at. And it may look messy, but when all is said and done, we have a joyous celebration and no one goes away hungry. Every one of you has bread to share. One of my son's music instructors recently commented that he loves to put instruments into the hands of his students because it means they can't hold other, more destructive things. All of you talented musicians out there, maybe your instrument is your bread. The thing you have in your hands that you can offer to draw people together in a shared endeavor, something that's constructive and joyful when so much in our world today is hurtful and divisive. And maybe your bread's inviting people into your home to share actual bread because you have the gift of hospitality and bringing community together. Or maybe you're one of our introverts and your bread is just reaching out to one lonely person. But whatever your bread, if it comes from the same origin point as the bread that Jesus fed his disciples, the love that God has placed in you, then it will be sufficient. In a little bit, we're going to invite you to come forward and have your feet washed and then to receive communion. And as we do this, I invite you to reflect on what it is that you're hungry for. How do you need the bread of Jesus' loving presence to feed you tonight? And in the following days, we'll continue our Holy Week journey together. We'll make our way through the stripping of the altar tonight, the darkness and the pain of Good Friday, and then the quiet dormancy of Holy Saturday. And as we go along, just allow this meal to settle into you. Pay attention to how the Spirit might be working in you and in your thoughts and reflections. And then come Easter morning, bring whatever bread you have, prepared to share it with others and to join in the feast. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.